Hello and welcome to Think in the Circle. Today we are looking at the differences between what might be a research problem versus a research question. Quite often I have friends approach me with what they think is a research question, when in fact it's a research problem. Consultants will construct the research questions slightly differently. Undergraduate students will have some difference between master students and PhD students. So hopefully the way I try to dissect the difference between a research problem and a research question might help you, depending on what level of study you might be, or if indeed you are a consultant new to the business of consulting, might help you to construct research questions a little bit better for your clients. If you're a PhD student, might help you become a little bit more of a critical thinker. Let's think about the differences between a consultant and a researcher. Now, consultants tend to focus on practice. So some of them, well, if there would be a very bad consultant if they focused not much on practice. Generally speaking, most consultancy reports I see, they are very vague on the focus on theory. Quite often, what is theory? We don't need theory. Let's just focus on the practice. In my view, great consultants have a good balance. They would always focus on the practice because they're trying to give practical solutions to their clients. But the really good ones will have a little bit of theory. And researchers, if they're great researchers, they would have a clear focus on theory, but also will have some focus on practice, especially in the area that I research. Which is in the areas of tourism, hospitality, events. I would expect a great researcher to also do the kind of research that gives practical applications to industry, unless, of course, they're developing some theory. So let's consider now the differences between a research problem and a research question. If we consider a research area, a research problem area as an orange, the segments of that orange could be the research questions. Now, when you are producing research, you might have one research question, you might have two, you might have three, no more than three normally, especially the higher you go from undergraduate all the way to PhD. Consultants might have multiple research questions, especially if it's practical applications. They might have more than three, but researchers would stick to three generally. So let's take, for example, something that is presented to me as a research question. Why does the island X hotel occupancy is always so low, perhaps compared to nearby islands? Let's use the island where I come from. Let's say Leros. Why does Leros hotel occupancy is always so low? That might be presented to me as a research question, but in fact, it's a research problem. It's a problem area that we might have identified. It fits, this particular one might fit more a consultancy type of report, but we will attempt to use this because it's slightly more difficult. It's a practical question. And in my area, in hospitality management research and tourism management research, a lot of colleagues come with practical questions. See if we can convert it to a research question. Now, the kind of segments we could have is that, there are problems with transportation for that island versus perhaps other islands. Bigger islands might have an airport. That island might not have an airport. Different literature, if we're looking at, let's say, airline or ferry boat issues, transportation issues. It could be, another research question could be focusing on weather patterns. And maybe that particular island has more rough weather than other surrounding different literature and different focus of a research question. Or it could be problems with the marketing. That particular destination management organization is not doing their job right, or they're doing the job, they think they're doing it right, maybe they're doing something wrong. But I could approach and I could go on with different bodies of literature that I could approach and develop research questions that are trying to answer this research problem, okay? So research problem is the big idea, and then you have research questions which try to address the problem. Now, for a PhD level all the way to the top, you have to remember that you are not there to resolve a research problem. You're there to build on the body of knowledge. So a research question or two focused in the area that you're excited because you read the literature and you found a gap in the literature would be great. That's what PhDs are about, really laser focused research questions. So let's take marketing, for example. Now, marketing is huge. You know, we could talk about consumer behavior, we could talk about sales, we could talk about marketing research. In marketing alone, we can talk about traditional forms of marketing, or we can talk about e-marketing. So here I go and I read and I find that perhaps e-marketing, I get a suspicion from all the reading that I do that e-marketing might be the issue. So here comes my research question. How can e-marketing influence occupancy in the first quarter? Yeah, maybe I found the time whether there is problems, or throughout the year. Maybe there is a low occupancy on that island. But you know, I have started the first step of formulating a question in a more focused area. Now, that type of question might be acceptable for an undergraduate research project. So in order to try to recreate the question and develop it for different levels, we are going to use Bloom's taxonomy, which helps us understand key differences between, let's say, undergraduate all the way to PhD. Thank you to Vanderbilt University Center for Teaching for creating this little graphic, which helps us create it for what we're trying to do here. Now, in most cases, the first three, remembering, understanding, and applying, is for undergraduate study. Sometimes a good final year undergraduate will also be able to analyze. But if you think about undergraduate dissertations, more often than not, they tend to go away from collecting primary data, and they only utilize secondary data to complete the dissertation. First year undergraduate will remember, mainly try to memorize information. Second year undergraduate will understand, and a third year undergraduate will apply. Plenty of third year undergraduates also do analyze, so there's a gray area between those, but I would argue that from remember to analyze is generally an undergrad. So if I take that understanding, how do I reconstruct the research question to understand what e-marketing tactics positively influence occupancy for island destinations? So I went for the middle there of Bloom's taxonomy, the middle verb, if you like. Now, if I go and move to master's level, now master's level tends to be analyzing. We always, if you think about a dissertation on master's, I don't know of any master's that doesn't require primary data, but we also need you as a master's student to evaluate that data, qualitative or quantitative, whatever data it might be. So to draw connections amongst the ideas between the literature, but also to justify a standard decision. So now we shift that research question to, I'm going to go for quantitative in this case, just as an example, to quantitatively analyze what e-marketing tactics positively influence occupancy for island. You can say positively or negatively, because then you can start creating hypotheses when you're using quantitative approaches. PhD level. PhD is about the production of new original work in the findings, in the methods that you use, in finding key gaps and trying to close those gaps in knowledge. So I changed now the research question for how does perceived usefulness. Now, where did that come from? You need to read at every step as you're developing your research question. Is not going to come, you know, the Holy Spirit is not going to come from up above and give you the idea. This is not a moment. It's more of a marathon, is not a sprint. Okay, so you need to read. And here what I've done is, in this example, I was reading different theories. I came across Eitzen's and Fishbein's theory of reasoned action. And then I realized that this was extended with technology acceptance model. I was using e-marketing. TAM, or technology acceptance model, has been used extensively for online work. And perceived usefulness and perceived ease of use are two of the key variables. So my research question has transformed into how does perceived usefulness or perceived ease of use of e-marketing tactics influence occupancy for island X? So I went from something that was rather generic, that a consultant could use and ask different questions, all the way to something that is very specific, that is more fit for a PhD. And the key element here is that the higher you go, the more the theory takes a distinctive place within your research questions. So as I said before, the Holy Spirit is not going to come down and help you. You got to help it. There is no such thing as a Eureka moment. There might be a Eureka moment near the end where you think it's a Eureka moment, but it's actually a process. You have to read a lot. You have to drop things that you were reading because they were leading nowhere, so that you refocus your reading in a particular area where you might think, oh, there's potential there. You look at patterns, and at every stage, especially when you have something that is substantial, you discuss with academic community. And if you're lucky, you might have an academic who might end up being your supervisor for any level of your study. Or if you're not that lucky, then you still have, if you're an undergraduate, you have other undergraduates you can discuss and talk. And a lot of the times is your ears will pick up the ideas more than what perhaps the other person might say. You're almost practicing in your mind what it is that you read, unless, as I said, if you're lucky, you have a really good academic who can help you bounce off ideas and they help you with their reading as well. That happens more towards the master's level and above in most cases, unless you have reached a stage where you've been allocated a supervisor. If you're lucky in your university, allocate a supervisor before you even wrote a research question, that would be amazing. So as I said, seek patterns. You're looking for gaps. You're trying to combine theories. If you say, "Oh, I can't find a gap," well, think about what other theory can you use with theory of reason and action to come up with a different research question that could fill in a gap. Always keep a record of your search keywords, because you forgot what you searched and you try to recreate this search and never works out. So always keep a record, and never do what I do what I say. Never say, I'll write that citation later. Plenty of software to help you save that reference in order to utilize the citation. Don't leave it for last moment. You'll be amazed by how much time you are going to save. Think about research questions. You got to remember, you've got different types of questions. They could be exploratory, they could be predictive, they could be interpretive, they could be descriptive. Descriptive questions are somewhat, consultants tend to use them a lot. Comparative questions exist, and relationship-based questions also exist. I hope the terms are self-explanatory. I might do another video about the different type of questions, but I think if you stick to start with descriptive, move to interpretive and exploratory, and leave the predictive for the higher level perhaps, and the comparative. That's it from me. Wishing you, as always, good luck. I hope you enjoyed this video.